Wisdom of the ages, ladies and gentlemen, 60 days to enlightenment. Well, for us, I believe this might be the 60th episode of Wednesday Wisdom. If you've been here before, then it is Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for some wisdom of the ages, Wednesday Wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's most wonderful book entitled as such. Wisdom of the Ages, 60 Days to Enlightenment. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the final chapter. And so if you've been here throughout the whole journey, I want to say thank you. And if you're just joining us, then thank you as well. But go back and look at the rest of this series that will be on my channel. But it's been such a wonderful journey, ladies and gentlemen. Lives of great men all remind us, great men and women, remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Ladies and gentlemen, the sands of time. This book that we've gone through together in this series had such wonderful authors and poets such as Pythagoras and Buddha and Lao Tzu and Confucius, Patanjali, even Jesus of Nazareth. Epictetus, ladies and gentlemen. That was a great one on divinity. It had Zen proverbs and Saint Francis of Assisi, Jalaluddin Rumi, the Sufi poet, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, William Shakespeare, John Milton, Alexander Pope, John Keats, ladies and gentlemen. Percy Shelley, William Blake, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Wordsworth. It feels like just a couple days ago I was doing that one. William Wordsworth. That was on the idea of nature. And there were so many after that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll continue through a few of them. Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Henry David Thoreau, Chief Seattle, Wolf Song, Walking Buffalo. Ralph Waldo Emerson had two in a row. Ralph Waldo Emerson there with Judgment and Self-Reliance. Those were fantastic ones as well. And all of these are parts of this series, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm not sure exactly, but I'm guessing it's up to 60 some videos or maybe even more. I'm starting to wonder if the 60 Days to Enlightenment on the cover meant that there were 60 chapters, ladies and gentlemen. And each one was for one day, every day. But we did it differently. We did one a week, ladies and gentlemen. And we expanded on it and made it a 20 to 40 minute thing each time. And I feel we leveled up ourselves. And we've created an ability through this practice to be able to bring more happiness to life, to be able to increase the quality of our lives through this great wisdom of the ages, continuing from some people like Emily Dickinson and Robert Barron Browning, Herman Melville, Walt Whitman, Lewis Carroll, Stephen Crane, William James, Joyce Kilmer, Ella Wheeler Wilcox, Khalil Gibran, ladies and gentlemen, Rudyard Kipling, William Butler Yeats, which we may have mentioned before, it seems like. So a couple of these showed up twice if they were that masterful. No, I haven't seen that one yet, but anyways. Gandhi, George Bernard Shaw, Paramahansa Yogananda, ladies and gentlemen, P.R. Teilhard, Desjardins, E.E. Cummings, Robert Frost, Dorothy Parker, Langston Hughes on the ideas of forgiveness. Ogden Nash on the ideas of comparison, which was just 2 weeks ago. Martin Luther King Jr. on nonviolence. And what we did last week, ladies and gentlemen, was from Mother Teresa on action and doing. And finally, the most wonderful, at least for me in my personal journey so far here in this realm that we find ourselves in. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. On the topic of awe, have you ever felt awe-inspired, ladies and gentlemen? I think this book has done that for me, and I certainly think it can do that for you as well, if you give it the chance, and if you're ready. I spoke to my mom on the phone yesterday about this idea of being ready. You know, because it's something that we all would want to do if we can find a piece of wisdom or an understanding or an insight that has changed our life for the better, and that has given us a new ability to go through life with more strength, more courage, more peace, more happiness, more joy, more contentment, more fulfillment, whatever it be. All in the categories of good things that we all would assume that everybody would want in their life. And so it was, how do we, how do we reach people? And this is what the last week's video was about, like it said, be the example, and that's how you reach people. But what can we do? And so really it comes down to, which is what I was getting at here, is when you're ready, ladies and gentlemen, the teachers will appear. When the student is ready, the teachers will appear. And the teachers aren't always people. The teachers aren't always people that look like teachers. The teachers can be anything. It can be a book, it can be a passage, it can be, watching nature and seeing a bird do something that finally gets you to understand something that can really help you in life, whether it be with your thoughts or your emotions, or any of the things that we all struggle with, because life is just that, ladies and gentlemen. As the Buddha put it, life is suffering. But so the main goal of his teachings was, how do we, not how do we conceptually eliminate suffering, but by understanding that we cannot eliminate suffering, suffer less through a new awareness, through a new way of living, which is also how the Tao is translated, the great book of the way. And this is how you can find a new way to go through your life with more of all those good things I mentioned just a moment ago: the comfort, the peace, the contentment, the fulfillment, and less of that which we all do struggle with, but at the same time recognizing that the struggles are part of it. And so this is once again the reason that we have done this. And if you are ready, ladies and gentlemen, and if you were ready, then you may have received important wisdom that we all need. At the very beginning of this book, before we started, Wayne gives us a little bit about, maybe why he did this and what he was thinking to put together this book of all of these essays. He goes, as I wrote each of these essays, Wayne says, I looked at a portrait or photo of the teacher that I was highlighting. And I would literally ask the individual, what would you like those of us here today to know? And then he said, I would listen and surrender and allow myself to experience their guidance, and in turn put it onto paper for us that we have done through this series. He also says, I wish to acknowledge each of these 60 teachers who felt compelled to share their wisdom for the benefit of each of us living here now. He says, I am also grateful to my dear friend and literary agent of the past quarter century, Arthur Pine, as well as my editor, reader, typist, and dear friend, Jonah Pyle, for their enormous contribution to the completion of this book. And so I would like to say the same thank you to Dr. Wayne Dyer for setting such an example through the way he lived his journey, so that it might influence, not only influence, but help us to create a higher quality of life, because that's what this has been about, ladies and gentlemen. And so without further ado, we come to the last chapter, entitled Awe, by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who lived 1940 to 2015. And so the way Dr. Wayne Dyer described himself was an infinite soul, disguised as a husband, father of 8, writer, and lecturer. Wayne Dyer is the author of this and more than 20 other books, including 3 textbooks. All right, are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Let's do it. Let's dive in to one final Wednesday wisdom. And don't worry, we'll have more plans in the future. So this will just sum up such a wonderful journey that Wisdom of the Ages has been for me, and I hope it has been for you. All right. If you're saying, all right, Chase, let's get into it. Hurry up. Come on. Have patience, young grasshopper. I hope you got a cup of tea. And let's get into this. So underneath the title to the chapter there, there's another title to the selection that comes from Wayne Dyer, and he titled it Brisbane. And this poem goes like this. Brisbane, where God was revealed to us. Only the two of us know the magic and awe of that presence. Against impossible odds, our connection to eternity further reinforced, strengthened. Yet the paradox always lingers. We are in control. We are not in control, doomed to make choices. All I am certain of is our love embedded in forever. Brisbane, from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. And he begins here by saying, well, I was just, my mind was like, well, what do you think about that? I usually say something about what I think about each of these poems, and I think what he's describing there is exactly what was said, where God was revealed to us, the source, this great mystery, and that only the two of us know the magic of that presence. I think when he says only the two of us, it means you and God, or us and the source, us and the Tao, whatever that be for you, ladies and gentlemen. Us in our connection with ourselves. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Against impossible odds. Our connection to eternity further reinforced and strengthened. So we're not temporary, ladies and gentlemen. We are connected to eternity. But the paradox always lingers, as he says. Here in this physical realm, we are in control and we are not in control at the same time. And so, as he says, doomed to make choices between, I think, allowing and pushing and striving rather than arriving. And so the final line says, all I am certain of is our love embedded in forever. And that is the truth of that connection to eternity. And the magic and awe is love. Love is the only thing. But that is a different subject in its own. So let's see what Dr. Wayne Dyer has to say about his own poem here. Fascinating way to end this one up. But Wayne Dyer begins by saying, this book is not about appreciating poetry and philosophy as much as it is about applying the wisdom of these writers to our everyday lives, ladies and gentlemen. All the selections in this book convey messages from sensitive, highly creative, and productive individuals who were alive here on planet Earth at one time, just as you and I are today, ladies and gentlemen. I feel a bit presumptuous, including a section of my very own in this assemblage of splendor from so many supreme poets, artists, and philosophers of the past, but I have chosen to welcome my discomfort and self-consciousness, which is a practice that many of us should work on, welcoming our discomfort and self-consciousness, because I want, Wayne says, to include Brisbane in this book, which has been an enlightening labor of love for me, as an example of a piece of poetic writing that is from the heart of a regular, everyday guy, written to his wife in a moment of pure awe and inspiration. And also because I want you to know the story behind the poetic effort from someone who is still here to share his reasons for writing it. So I conclude, Wayne continues, this compilation, which is Wisdom of the Ages, with a poem I wrote for my wife, Marceline, and hope that you too will take pen in hand and toss aside fear of embarrassment, ridicule, or unfair comparisons to the great poets, and express your innermost feelings to those you love, ladies and gentlemen. To those you love. This selection is titled Brisbane because that is the city in Northern Australia where back in 1989 I felt and knew absolutely, beyond any doubt, that there was a force at work in the universe that I call God. Can you think of a time where you came to that same realization for yourself, ladies and gentlemen? To where you knew without a doubt, you didn't believe, you didn't hope, and felt kind of certain. You really knew that without a doubt that there was a force at work in the universe that you can call whatever you want, that he says that I call God. It was my introduction to knowing God, whereas until that day, I had only known about God. This selection is unique for all of us so that we can discover that for ourselves. Go from knowing about God to knowing God. My wife, Marceline, he continues, and two of our children, who were 1.5 and 3.5 at the time, were with me on a speaking tour of Australia in February of 1989. I spoke to a large gathering of people during the day, and we returned exhausted to our hotel in Brisbane and retired for the evening. I had one of the children in my bed while Marceline slept and nursed the baby in the adjoining bed. At 4:05 a.m., it's an interesting story, and this is why I love Wayne, because he always just goes into these stories. You're like, wait a minute. Wait, what? So at 4:05 a.m., something that had never happened before or since occurred to startle me beyond anything I could describe here. He says, my wife awakened from a deep sleep and began to rearrange the room. She took our 3.5-year-old out of my bed and put her with her own little 1.5-year-old boy. She proceeded to get into my bed and snuggle up next to me. This was uncharacteristic of Marceline, particularly because she was nursing our son full time. I was in a semi-conscious state of shock, thinking I was having a dream. Now, this is odd. My wife had been either nursing or pregnant for the previous 8 years and consequently had completely halted her menstrual cycle. Furthermore, she had been assured that she would not get pregnant again because of a surgical procedure in which one ovary had been removed. But to be certain, we practiced birth control. And I withdrew at the critical moment to put on an exclamation point on our precaution. Yet, despite all this, at 4:05 a.m. in Brisbane, Australia, our youngest daughter, Sage Igus Dyer, was conceived and was brought into our world on November 16th, 1989. This is a very personal story. I didn't expect this, Wayne. Well then, so what awoke my wife, he says, what awoke my wife at that instant, question mark. So he's like surprised. He goes, this was very uncharacteristic. We had been, you can imagine, raising children for 7 years straight with a new one every year. Wow. And then, suddenly he's just wondering what it is. What caused this strange behavior by a woman who is always in control to appear to be almost obsessed? What force was operating that night, he says. Who was really in charge here? I think he's referring to this infinite force. Sage has been a uniting force of love in our marriage. Yet when I discovered that my wife was pregnant from that wonderfully bizarre middle of the night obsession, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I knew, as did Marceline, that there were forces working to bring that little angel into the material world through us that went way beyond our decision and all of their attempts to not have any more children. Surgery, birth control, withdrawal, an absence of a female cycle with which to keep track of ovulation, and being sound asleep in a foreign land are all insignificant minor obstacles to a life force that strives to manifest into our material world. This is describing the force, ladies and gentlemen, in a very unique way. On Mother's Day, 1989, I wrote the Brisbane poem for my wife and put it in a framed collage of our Australia trip. But no matter how many words I write and how desperately I attempt to convey the specialness of that experience, as I wrote, only the two of us, see, so he meant something different than I thought, only the two of us know the magic and awe of that presence. From that time until now, I have never experienced one moment of doubt about the presence of God in my life, he says. I do not engage in long arguments with disbelievers, nor do I feel any particular need to convince anyone of what I know. I simply express it in my writing, in my lectures, and yes, in my own little poetic expression written to and for my wife. He says, I go back to that moment and my connection to that divine awakening, all pervasive, omnipresent force, is reinforced and strengthened. I also know through this experience that every soul which manifests into a human being is also part of this divine drama. Remember, as he said previously, that we are all God in different distressing disguises, and what he also just described as the great divine drama. We like to think that we are the ones in charge of such matters. Yet a big part of me knows that nothing can stop a determined soul. And the paradox of the statement, doomed to make choices, is evident at all times. This is, Wayne continues, We are in control and we are not in control all at the same time. And learning to live with this enigma is a big part of what knowing God is all about, ladies and gentlemen. And he's right. He's so right about that. You arrived here through a similar miraculous scenario. Your heart started beating inside of your mother's womb a few weeks after conception, and it is a total mystery to everyone on our planet. How does something come from nothing? And we just talked about this nothingness yesterday in our Tuesday Tao videos. How does something come from nothing? Where was that life before conception? What happens in the instant of creation? We're all walking, breathing, talking paradoxes, and perhaps we do best to let go of the intellectual struggle and accept with a loving heart while being certain of our love embedded in forever. So he continues here by saying, by all means, hang on to the awe and appreciate every moment of life and every molecule of creation. But somewhere deep down inside you, in a tiny corner of your awareness, know for certain that there is one divine presence at work in you and in the entire universe as well, and that it never makes a mistake. Despite what you may have come to believe over the years or what somebody may have told you, this universe that we are a part of is an intelligent system that we are all part of. Excuse me. And we make our entrances and exits precisely on time. There are no mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. Wayne finishes this book with one final paragraph. It's been such a fun journey, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't really expect this from this final little chapter here, but it's a good way to sum it up and kind of puts a finishing touch on it. And so, once again, I'm really glad you've been here. And if you've gotten value, consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, then let me know in the comments below if you have gotten this book for yourself yet, because it's linked in the description. This last selection, Wayne concludes with, is my message to you, as well as my tribute to that all-revealing moment back in early 1989. Be certain of one thing, Wayne says, as it is expressed in A Course in Miracles, which was one of his favorites. He refers to it all the time in his lectures and teachings. He says, and as I have attempted to convey to you here in this final chapter, it is the one and only suggestion I personally want to offer you and leave with you as you close this book. Quote, if you knew who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. Unquote. If you knew, he says, who walks beside you, I think one of the things that we all struggle with real deep down inside, even though we may not think of it directly, is the fear of being alone. And that somehow, eventually, or some way, that we will just be alone. And I think getting past that fear is what is being described here in this book, in the Wisdom of the Ages and the Tuesday Tao videos that we do, and everything that we do that talks about the Force and this divine, eternity that we are, and that is us, and that we are not separate from. But he says it this way, which is so wonderful. If you knew, ladies and gentlemen, who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, then that fear would be impossible. And finally, last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, he concludes by saying Namaste, which means, I honor the place in you where we are all one. Boom. A boom to wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. A boom to the wisdom of the ages. In 60 wonderful pieces, 60 episodes here on this series of life-changing wisdom. Life-changing wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. And just for your reference, the last page after that says HarperCollins Publishers. Books by Dr. Wayne Dyer. There's a spiritual solution to every problem. Your erroneous zones, which was his first one. Pulling your own strings, which is the next one we might get into. It's back over there on my other shelf. You'll see it when you believe it. Your way, the way to your personal transformation. What do you really want for your children? Which is what my mom's reading at the moment. How to Raise Happy Kids, and a valuable guide for the man who's helped millions. He's talking highly of himself there. But that's fine. I think we should, it's a sad dog that doesn't wag his own tail every now and then. Real magic, ladies and gentlemen, creating miracles in everyday life. That's a great one. That's a great one. Your sacred self, manifest your destiny, and of course, wisdom of the ages. Brought to us by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I can't thank him enough. I can't thank him enough. If you're wondering, here's a picture of Dr. Wayne Dyer. This is the cover of Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, obviously, but if you've wondered what he looks like and you haven't seen him, that's the man there. And if you really yet haven't listened to him speak, then literally go to YouTube and type in Dr. Wayne Dyer. And even his audiobooks are him kind of speaking it all out in a much better fashion. But ladies and gentlemen, remember that this isn't the end. We got much more journey to come, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, if you knew who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. That's a great quote. You should write that one down on a little note and put it on the wall, or on have a little plaque made that says it back there. That little plaque back there says dream, imagine, and believe, ladies and gentlemen. And also remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and a greater understanding of the wisdom of the ages. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a way. There is a way that we can change our lives through using that wisdom. And finally, remember to make happiness the way. Because when we can make happiness the way, the activity that we bring to life, then the things that we've always been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, but I can't be happy now, that will no longer be the same, ladies and gentlemen. And those things that we have been putting in the distance will become irrelevant because we are already there. And then the entire journey becomes wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate all of you that spend time here with me and Dr. Wayne W. Dyer and all the wonderful authors and poets in the wisdom of the ages. Once again, you should get this book for yourself to support Dr. Wayne Dyer and his family. And that's linked in the description below the video. You can expand that right down there. Also, get yourself one of my landscape paintings in the back. Those are always a good price, $60 or whatever for a painting that can just change a room, I tell you what. And also a link to C60 Purple Power. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, just thank you so much. And I really hope this has had a positive impact on those of you that spent time here with me and Wayne and all the wonderful authors and poets of the wisdom of the ages, and Lao Tzu of the Tao. And I think we'll conclude this series with that, ladies and gentlemen. I might come back in the future, maybe add something onto this series referencing some more authors and poets of my own finding, and that might be a good way, a good way to go. But time to create a new series, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, I love you all and appreciate you, and thank you so much. And we'll see you next week on Tuesday Down. And hopefully I can do some short videos in between now and then. I was kind of lazy the last couple of weeks. You know how that is, ladies and gentlemen. But all right, thank you. Love you, and we'll see you next time, next Tuesday. Tuesday down.